Hello, hello. Welcome back. Week 3 of emotion regulation. We are here. I love today for us because today we start talking about changing emotional responses. If for all my DBT people out there, we're going to be talking about checking the facts. And for those of you who are new to that verbiage, it's going to become hopefully very familiar because it is a great skill to use and applicable in all situations. So we'll talk about the skill of checking the facts. We're going to talk about the skill of opposite action, and problem solving are the 3 core skills in this category, all about changing your emotional response. We'll see what we get to today and come back for more if we don't get to all 3. We'll see what happens. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Before we start talking about the skill of checking the facts, it's very important to have a foundation of understanding and naming our emotions, because ideally we know which emotion is present and that emotion that we want to work with. Having that information helps us to be able to move through this skill. So in the last episode, we talked about the model for describing emotions. The shortest recap of this one is it's all the different components of emotions. If you remember, everything starts with a prompting event. Our body starts responding to it. We have interpretations about that prompting event or that thing that happened. And then from there, that leads us into action, into behaviors. And what we do, how we respond, then either sets off new emotions, or perpetuates some emotion that we are currently having or experiencing. And then the other thing that we talked about when we were going through the model for describing emotions is we gave lots of different examples of times when the emotion kind of fits the facts of the situation, or typical prompting events that set off certain emotions. Right? So we talked about fear showing up when there's a threat, or anger showing up when an important goal is being blocked. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about just understanding and naming emotions. And for a brief review, sometimes just by naming emotions and sometimes just understanding the components, that in and of itself is enough to help us regulate. And then sometimes we need more skills. So insert the first skill of the day for changing our emotional response, checking the facts. So for those of you who have the workbook and want to be following along, and we'll post this in the video like we do, and on a worksheet on our website. This is emotion regulation. Handout 7 is where we're going to start today. And let's talk about checking the facts. So where this skill comes from is it comes from this idea that a lot of times, and this is an all human thing, this is not just certain types of people or situations, a lot of times we respond to our interpretations of an event versus the actual facts about an event. So just sit with that for a second and think about the last time maybe you had a strong emotion to something, and then ask yourself, what is it that you were responding to? Were you responding to the actual facts about the situation, or was there a secondary interpretation that really ignited some feeling, an additional emotion? We talked about this many moons ago when we talked about mindfulness and we talked about non-judgmental stance. And I think we highlighted this there, but it was a long time ago, so I'll just say it again now, that this is another plug for revisiting that content, because one of the ways that we can work with this, and we will do this today, is really examining and looking at our thoughts and trying to kind of untangle from our judgments is a step in this skill that's part of checking the facts. And it's really valuable. So a lot of times the strong emotional responses that we're having is coming from a place of either some form of a judgment, maybe things shouldn't be this way, or this person shouldn't be acting that way. And even sometimes it's very subtle, we don't recognize that it's a judgment. A common example that I give often to my parents, I can't tell you how many times I've heard something to the effects of, my child is so disrespectful. And we think when someone says disrespectful, we think we know what they mean, But really, that's a judgment term. That's a very big placeholder for a lot of different behaviors. So if my child does something, let's say I ask them to do something and then they don't do it, and then I have a strong emotional response because, oh my gosh, my child is so disrespectful. What I'm responding to is that sense of that perceived disrespect. Versus, what would it be like just to respond to the fact that my kid didn't do the thing I asked them to do? So very two different things, right? Now plug that into the workplace. Maybe the language is similar. Maybe it's like a coworker being disrespectful, or someone's like wasting my time, or I don't know, plug in common complaints. When that person's behavior is showing up and it's rubbing us the wrong way, again, am I reacting to that versus just the behavior that's right in front of me?
So good.
Make sense?
Yeah, it's so good.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So in true DBT fashion, there is a checking the facts step-by-step process. So I'm going to walk you through this. And then Faith, while you're listening, if there's any example that you have in your mind, see if you can try to like do this in live time, a little experiential practice here. And then ask me any questions along the way, like where you might get stuck. Because I feel like this is one of those skills that you have to experience it. You really have to try this one on to see where you get stuck, where the little tangles might be, and then what other skills might we need to help untangle and move through it. Okay, so step one of checking the facts, we like to ask ourselves, what emotion is it that I'm trying to change? So if you can draw back a recent event or draw up a recent event where you had a strong emotional reaction, what emotion do you think was the primary one? Sometimes in step one, people will tell me, I don't really know, because the lived experience is there's lots of different emotions. And so take your best guess, and it will make more sense why this is important as we kind of move through it all. And if for anyone's listening, if we can't identify emotion here, it's okay, and let's just go to the next step, because sometimes that will help us get there. So step one, let's name the emotion, and then don't get stuck here. Continue on even if you can't. Step two is to ask ourselves, what was the prompting event for this emotion? So describe the facts that you observed through your senses. This is everyone's opportunity to challenge your judgments, your absolute thinking, the black and white thinking that might show up in this situation. I love doing this step written down. This is a great time to grab a pen and paper, jot down your thoughts, because what's happening in our head is sometimes we think it's descriptive, and then when we write it out on paper, we can more easily kind of pull out what's not descriptive. So I think we gave this metaphor before, but the prompt I like to give people is like imagining that there was a camera in the room when this event happened, or a drone in the sky watching this thing occur. And if we review the tape, like what's the play-by-play? So when we say describe the prompting event, the who, the what, the when, the where, we're going to leave out the why. So this is not about interpretations yet. So what's really nice about this skill is sometimes just by doing this first step, or technically second step, it's enough to get new information to come in, and then all of a sudden we have this like softening of our emotions. Oh, right. It's not that my kid is disrespectful. It's that my kid didn't do that thing that I'm asking him for, and maybe he needs some coaching right now. Right? Like, okay, I can go turn towards him and help him. Or, oh, I'm having really strong reaction because this keeps happening, but the facts are, this is what just happened right now. It's not always happening. It doesn't happen every single time. It's just happening right now. So sometimes that's enough. And then sometimes it's not. Sometimes we need a little bit more. So step 3 is inviting us into looking at what our interpretations are further. So I described the prompting event, but I'm still feeling pretty strongly about it. I'm still feeling pretty activated. Another great place to like write out your thoughts and like really go for it, right? Like really let them all out. Let them all out on paper here. List them out. What are your assumptions? What are your interpretations? And then the practice here after you do that, maybe on the other side of the page or on the next page, is then to write out, like, is there any other possible interpretations? Or can you practice looking at this from a more dialectical standpoint? Can you practice seeing all sides of the situation? And then when we can do that, we can then look and kind of like test our interpretations to see if they fit the facts. So I'm having the thought that this person doesn't respect me because they just did this. And maybe they're just having an off day, or maybe they're not aware of how much I have on my plate. And so their behavior of giving me more work when I'm not feeling equipped for it, maybe that isn't a sign of not being respected. Maybe it's just that.
I love the leave out the why.
Yes.
Who, what, when, where. Forget the why.
So my little note here, my asterisk here, what we're describing right now, so step 2 and 3, this is called cognitive flexibility, right? I see something one way, and then I'm going to slow down, try to see it from different angles, test my interpretations, all that stuff. In order to be cognitively flexible, we have to have a lower emotional state. So when our emotions get really high, our cognitive flexibility gets really low. And so sometimes it's a sign that if we're trying to do this, if we can't come up with any other interpretations or we can't see it from any other angles, maybe that's a cue we're still to activate it. So we might want to pull on some distress tolerance skills. Little tip, go back and watch some distress tolerance skills. Maybe plug these in here to help bring down the intensity. Or even if you don't change anything, if I ever get stuck here and I'm like, ooh, I really can't see it in any other way, shape, or form, then that's just my cue to not move any further. Like, okay, clearly I'm still pretty activated. This might not be the time to act on however it is I'm feeling, because I'm in emotion mind and I'm having to cue them in strong emotion mind. So maybe it's time to go back and just practice describing the situation again, or maybe you need to take a little time out, step out, and then come back to it. Take a little break, a little breather, come back to the situation. Okay, so similar to step 2, sometimes we get to step 3, we challenge our thinking, and we're like, oh, wow, look, that diffused it. I'm feeling much different. That took my anxiety from an 80, now I'm down to like a 20. It feels much more manageable. I can move forward. Or I was angry at like 100 and now I'm at 70. I can work with that. Other times, again, it's still not moving the needle enough. So then we go to the next question. So we've looked at the facts, we've looked at our interpretations, and now the question is, am I assuming a threat? What is the threat in this moment? So I encourage people to label it really specifically. See if you can get there. And then can we try to like work with that threat? Can we assess the probability that that event will occur? Or can we think of as many other possible outcomes as you can? This is such a big unlock for so many people, especially when we're like in high emotional states, is we have this like sense of like this threat, this bad thing is going to happen. And like, because our emotion mind is like so in alignment with that thought, that sometimes even just saying like, well, let's look at the probability of that happening. Or is there like any other possible outcomes? We're like, well, yeah, I guess maybe that thing won't happen. Maybe something else will happen. And that alone sometimes can be enough of like a shift. So I really like that question.
I really love that too. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, oftentimes.
I was going to say, oftentimes I tell people our brains will go to worst case scenario because that's like what we just do. We're just wired that way, right? So we have worst case scenario living somewhere over here. We have best case scenario somewhere over here. And usually what ends up happening is something somewhere in between. So even just like remembering that, like I'm assuming this threat, but oh yeah, I've been here before and I thought about this catastrophe or this threat before, and it didn't happen. So maybe the likelihood is low again this time. Right? Or like, I typically think that this thing is going to happen and it doesn't. Familiar thought, but doesn't play out.
Yeah. And what a strong like anchor for resilience too, your own mental resilience. To be
Yeah.
like, it feels so confronting in this moment. It feels really big and really scary, but like just pause for a minute. Have you been through something like this before? Have you survived something like this before? Has it like come and gone without that worst case scenario actually playing out?
Yes.
And I feel like that's such a powerful way to like re-anchor to what's actually happening in front of you.
Yeah. Okay, so we ask ourselves, is there a threat? We try to work with that threat, kind of dismantle it a little bit. And again, sometimes we just have enough information to soften the emotion. Still not getting that significant effect, then we go to the next question. Similar to the threat, but it's slightly different, a little bit bigger. The question is, what's the catastrophe? So is there, kind of in addition to the threat, is there some bigger catastrophe that I'm really worried about? Like, what is that catastrophe that I'm imagining happening right now? So the skill here is, once we name what that catastrophe is, we then want to come back and imagine moving through that catastrophe, like in a skillful way. And again, sometimes that alone will help bring down the emotional intensity, because catastrophes are catastrophes. And catastrophizing is never really helpful, and rarely the catastrophic outcome is what actually occurs. But the brain, we can't really recognize the difference. If we're catastrophizing, it just feels so true that this thing is going to happen, and that's so scary. So in a skillful way, if I can say, here's what I'm most scared about, and if that does happen, could I be resourced enough to like move through it? And there's a skill for this is called coping ahead, and we'll come to that in a couple of weeks. We'll flesh it out more. But if in the meantime, just tagging it, like how would you move through it? How would you work with that? Or apply some like radical acceptance. Again, sometimes just giving yourself a little answer helps to soften soften our emotional response. An example that's coming to my mind right now is someone that I'm working with currently. This is in the workplace situation where he has struggles with having strong anger in different interpersonal moments. And when we looked at why, or like the prompting events, one of them that keeps coming up is feeling like another coworker is undermining him. And I'm like, well, what is it about that that's like having such a strong pull, right? Like anyone would be frustrated, anyone would be annoyed, but to get this like really angry, what's happening there? And so the threat is like looking bad in front of other people, or essentially looking like he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then the catastrophe is that he's going to get fired. So when he gets, air quotes, undermined, we describe that behavior more descriptively. Then here's what I'm actually responded to is this fear or this catastrophe that I'm going to lose my job. Because I look so bad, he's pointing out the things that I'm doing wrong. And like that's really what I'm responding to. So again, like, okay, so worst case scenario that happens, how would you handle that? What would you do? How would you move through that? Like just remembering that, like, okay, even if that outcome does occur. So in this case, he was like, well, I actually have really good relationship with my bosses. I've been here for a long time. I'm sure if I get called into the office saying like they're going to give me my notice, I could probably pitch a case to stay, or I'll land on my feet elsewhere, right? Like, and just that helps to know I have a little plan in place. So the next time this comes up, how do I work with that emotional intensity that comes up with this person? So last but not least, we move through all those steps. Step number 6 is to ask yourselves, okay, now looking at all this information, does the emotion that I'm experiencing, either does its intensity or how long it's sticking around fit the actual facts of the situation? And we like to say, and this is another throwback to our mindfulness episode talking about the prompt here is to ask wise mind. Asking my wise mind, does this emotion fit the facts? Because emotion mind will tell us, yeah, it fits the facts. And then logic mind might be like, build a case around it, right? So does in my wise mind, now when I look at all of this and I see really what I was responding to, does my anger at 100 because this person asked me a question during a meeting fit the facts? So next, as you're all probably wondering, and what you're probably thinking is, okay, then what? So if it fits the facts, yes, then what do we do? If it fits the facts, no, then what do we do? And then that's where we'll move to next. So that, my friends, is checking the facts. The 6 questions to go through.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like, if you're going to dress rehearse tragedy, or if you're going to worry, like, what a way to walk through like the levels of it. This is really a constructive framework.
And I love this skill because I feel like it's accessible for everyone. You can do it at your own pace. You can also crowdsource. So if you get stuck somewhere, this would be a great time to ask people around you, or someone that you love or trust, or someone that you know well, to say, like, I'm having a really hard time looking at this from a different perspective. Like, what do you think about this? Or I don't know, like, I feel like I'm thinking about it flexibly, but I'm just feeling a certain way about this still. Like, what do you think I'm responding to, right? Like, bring other people in to help get you some data can also be really helpful here.
Yeah, I love it. So many resources available to us at any given moment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Walking through your example in your mind, did you have any sticky parts or any questions that I can zoom in on? Any parts of this I can zoom in on for you?
Honestly, no, that was really clear.
Okay.
It's like it was very easy to follow. And even when you said, like, look at the interpretation further, I literally just wrote, dump it all, like, just brain dump. Don't edit it, just get it all out. Like,
yes.
That's really good. And like the other possible interpretations, am I assuming a threat? It felt like it was DEFCON levels. It was like, am I assuming a threat? And then am I assuming a catastrophe? And being able to respond accordingly to each, or like right size whatever this emotion is that's coming up for you. That was really cool to engage with it at that level.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into the skill. The next skill is called opposite action, which is one way of working with our emotions when our response doesn't fit the facts of what to do with it. But I will say, like, checking the facts is the backbone for the next skill. So we have to kind of dress rehearse this. We have to go through it. And my encouragement is to try this on all the time. Like, when you have emotional response, like, just check the facts real quick. Get familiar with it. This is like such a core skill that everyone can use, again, like at any time. That's really helpful. From personal experience, back in the day, when I was an intern, I was really excited to like work one-on-one with people and like sit in a quiet room and have like deep conversations and like, really comb through stuff. And what I was required to do as an intern was stand up and lecture in front of a group of people on topics that I am new to myself. I did not feel like I had a lot of mastery on these topics that I was going to be lecturing on. And I already hated public speaking. I think I got through all of my business school with like taking the least amount of giving presentations, or like even my speech class. I think I barely passed through that one because I just didn't want to give them. Basically, what I'm describing is that my skill set for managing my anxiety around public speaking was just to not do it. I just avoided it. I just did the best that I could. I did my workarounds. And now my job required me to stand up in front of people and speak. And that was terrible. That was awful. Insert panic attacks, insert really bad anxiety. And then again, my old coping mechanisms was I suddenly was like, just, sick. Happened to be sick the first day I had to give the presentation. Could you imagine that? Maybe ran a little bit late one day. So I just walked in like after someone else had to get it started. And then my supervisor at the time called that out real quick. I was like, no, you can't. One, you're going to get fired. Like, this is your job. And you can't go through your life just avoiding the things that make you fearful. So I had to employ this, a lot of checking the facts. So what's the emotion I want to change? What's the facts of the situation? What's my interpretations? I had lots of interpretations. And then my catastrophes and my threat, my catastrophe was my fear was passing out in front of people while I was talking. Because I start talking and I get like cotton mouth and my heart would be racing, like, oh my God, I'm in a panic attack and then I'm going to pass out in front of you. It's going to be so embarrassing. Or at the time, I really worried that I was going to die, like I was going to have a heart attack. So a little psychoeducation. Panic attacks you are often safe from. It just feels terrible. So just knowing that information was helpful. But I really had like work with like, here's the facts of the situation. Here's my coping ahead plan for if these catastrophes occur. And then you just got to do it over and over and over and over again, ride through that and be able to tolerate that feeling to get to the other side. But checking the facts was very much involved in that process.
Look at how it like paid off too. Then you like fast forward a decade plus and suddenly you're a professor teaching classes and doing this work
Plot
together.
twist.
Plot twist. That's a super helpful example though, because I think a lot of people deal with that level of anxiety or even onsets of panic attacks too. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about checking the facts. So now let's talk about opposite action. So this is one of the tools that we have when we say that, again, our emotion intensity or the emotion duration is not what we would say justified by the facts of the situation. So big disclaimer here, your emotions are always valid, but they're not always justified. Bear with me on this one, okay? So we say that our emotions are always valid because they are coming from somewhere, right? So Meredith's 110 fear response walking in the door because I'm about to give a presentation, we would say is valid because I had this big fear that I was going to die. Like, oh yeah, of course. Of course your body is like responding. And when we check the facts, that intensity is a mismatch to the facts of the situation. So we always want to validate, look for what's valid. And then the follow-up is, again, is it justified? Is this emotion justified? Now, if it's too much of a sticky part and we can't get past that, then this is where we talk about action urges again. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that each emotion comes with an action urge. And then the question is it effective for me to act on that urge? So if the justified part is a little too sticky, just go to this next question of like, what is it that I feel like doing? And is it effective for me to act on that urge? So go back to old Meredith. Meredith, is it effective to not show up for your work? And at the time I had bills to pay, like most of us do. And I chose it was not effective to just avoid this thing and lose my job. So imagine in your mind a decision tree. We have this emotion and we say, does this emotion fit the facts? And if we get to the answer of no, or is acting on this emotion effective, and we get to no, then what we want to consider is the skill of opposite action. So what that means is just like it sounds. You want to do the opposite of what is it that you're feeling. So I don't want to go give that presentation. So full opposite action would be going and giving that presentation. I'm feeling really angry at that disrespect. So I want to yell or I want to exert my control. So opposite action would be gently avoiding, maybe even doing something kind of nice, taking a time out. Another really common one is like sadness. Maybe I'm having the urge to just like withdraw or isolate. So opposite action is like getting active, going and doing things. What's important about opposite action is there's some like textbook examples, and we'll list some of them up up here with us today. Sometimes our action urge fits the textbook examples, and other times it can be wildly different. And what's important is you just try to employ opposite action to whatever it is that you're feeling like doing. So if you're deeming that ineffective, doing the opposite of it or doing something different, that's opposite action. That works with it. Okay, so step-by-step opposite action. We'll go through some examples. Similar to checking the facts. Well, actually, you start with checking the facts. We identify the name of the emotion that you want to change. Check the facts to make sure that we have enough information to know it is that we're determining how we want to work with it. And then step 3 is to really identify and describe your action urges. So when I think about building mastery around this skill, oftentimes we need to spend a lot of time developing like that muscle of being able to identify our urges. So many people out there just move from emotion to behavior, emotion to behavior, emotion to behavior. But really, if we like zoom in and slow it down, there's this in-between space, which is we feel that emotion, we feel the urge to do something, and then we act on it. So what I love about this is that is our choice point. If we can identify what our urges are, then that brings back like our agency. Like, oh, I'm feeling the urge to do this thing, and I get to choose whether I do that or not. Sometimes easier than other times, but still, there's still a choice there. This can also be a place to bring in like our values work, or it's like name our why. Like, well, why would I want to do something different? So like in my old example, my why is I wanted to grow through that fear. I wanted to keep my job. So what's your why? Why is it that you want to work on this emotion or this strong response? Kind of like what's in it for you, or like what's the bigger value? And sometimes I think that can be a really helpful, like motivating force to keep going with the opposite action. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So once we identify our urges, again, we just try to employ the opposite action. Mm-hmm. And then there's this little saying that you want to do opposite action all the way. And then you want to repeat that over and over and over again as much as possible until the action urges and your emotion changes, essentially.
I like that. Opposite action all the way. Don't just like
All the way.
Commit to it.
Yes, yes.
You want to yell and scream, and instead you choose like nonviolent communication and a gentle Irish goodbye. Like, you know, really landing on that.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. Like back in the day, things like, you know, in the 90s for anger management, a lot of the thought was like, just get the anger out. So people would go to these like anger management groups and like break things and scream and yell and do all this stuff. But really, when you act on that emotion urge, you actually just get more of it. And you're just doing it like in this protected space. So kind of the current think of working with anger is you want to do opposite action all the way. So I'm feeling this force within and checking the facts it's not justified or it's not effective to act on this. So doing the complete opposite is like pulling yourself in a completely different way or training yourself to work with that emotional energy, and countering it with something else then keeps us from acting on it, which keeps giving us more of the same feeling.
Yeah, and just real quick, because I think it's an important, like connecting the dots. Just because it's valid doesn't mean it's justified.
Yes.
I imagine that in that moment, like if anger is a big thing, right? It's, if you, like, would you suggest like acknowledging for yourself, like it's perfectly valid for me to be feeling this anger, but I am choosing to not express it. So that way you're not like gaslighting yourself into thinking that it wasn't like a valid thing and you're just not expressing that. Or okay.
That's called invalidation, and that will fuel the flames. Okay, well, let's start with anger since we're on that emotion. I'll walk us through like a opposite action, and then since we already mentioned fear or anxiety, let's go back to that one. And then we can link some other examples for people to use. So remembering anger fits the facts when an important goal is blocked, or someone you care about is being attacked, or you're being insulted, right? So again, if we're saying we know where that anger is coming from, but it's not effective to act on that anger, maybe this is all happening and you're in a place where that's not appropriate to show that anger, or again, like you're in the workplace and that will be, you might lose your job. So doing opposite to the anger action urges might look like gently avoiding the situation. So maybe you leave the room. Maybe you just don't look at the person. Maybe like you turn your body positioning so you don't have to like directly look at the thing that's pissing you off. That can be really helpful. Taking a time out, like another place to use toilet mindfulness. Go to the bathroom, lock yourself in the stall. No one has to know what you're doing in there. You can do some slow, deep breathing. And then an opposite action of anger, because anger tells us to defend ourselves or to attack back, is to be kind. So sometimes when we feel really angry, then we get angry at ourselves for being angry. So this is an opportunity to validate yourself, try to be kind to yourself. Sometimes we can be kind to the other person. Sometimes that's not accessible. So if being kind directly to the other person or the person that's setting off the anger, then can we be kind and courteous to other people around us? Or at least just neutral is like what I like to say, but being kind is the full extension of the opposite action. And then there's some like all the way opposite actions for this one. Imagine having empathy for the person that you're angry with. So stepping into their shoes, imagining they have really good reasons for what happened. Changing your posture. So now anger, we do this, right? We're like ready to attack back. So anger is one of those emotions that was really activating, and it really like tightens us and tenses us up. Again, we're ready to defend ourselves. So changing our posture, like opening our hands. This is the skill of willing hands that we talked about in distress tolerance. It's very hard actually to stay angry with open hands. I think we talked about this in the distress tolerance module, but try it out next time you're angry. Just open your hands, willing hands. What does that feel like? You try like softening your face muscles. You do half smile. And again, like deep breathing. You could go run or engage in like a physically energetic but non-violent activity like you called out. So all of those are different opposite actions for anger. Lots of things to work with.
Yeah, so those are some great examples.
The opposite action all the way for all the emotions, like no matter what emotion you're working with, will involve trying to change your body chemistry. So like either like some type of paced breathing or just changing your posture. Those are components for all of them, just to name that. Okay, let's do fear, and then we'll wrap for this one for today. So you heard my examples, right? Fear fits the facts when your life or someone that you care about there's a threat to that or your well-being. So again, we know the reasons why that shows up and when it's not effective to act on it. So when we're feeling anxious and we check the facts and we say, oh, it's actually not effective to just avoid this, then the opposite action is to do what you're afraid of doing, and you do it over and over again. So approach the events, approach the places or the tasks that you have to do, or the people that make you feel anxious, again, when it's not justified or it's not effective to act on that. Another opposite action here is doing things that give you a sense of control and mastery over your fears. So this is where checking the facts comes into play. Sometimes like that mental rehearsal, like having a plan of like, well, if this feared outcome does happen, I know I'm going to be able to work with it, or I'm going to really work on that paced breathing so I know I can keep my body somewhat regulated even when this emotion is really strong. It's a huge opposite action, and I feel like I have a little bit more control even if I can't control the whole thing. And then full opposite action for fear or working with your anxiety is taking in new information about the situation. So again, like fear, we get that tunnel vision and we kind of get locked in to what could happen or what might happen, but we're missing so much other information. So can I notice that I'm safe even though I'm feeling this threat? Can I change my posture and try to keep a confident tone? Can I change my body chemistry? Basically take in more information versus just getting stuck in that tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm. And like if you feel like this is a helpful cue, if you feel like there's only one or two options, like it's either I do this or I do that, I feel like that's a really helpful prompt for me and for my people too when we go, like, what other options are there? It's rarely just black and white.
Yes.
Like there's an awful lot of gray.
A lot. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of examples for this. It's like one of the places where I feel like the workbook really shines. It gives like really concrete examples of times where emotions fit the facts and then concrete examples for opposite action. So my encouragement for everyone is to try this when your emotion intensity is not at 100. Start when you're at like a 50 or maybe even below. To practice it, try it on for size. What does it feel like to feel the urge to do something and then just pause and then do something different? Or even play around with it with like emotions that like feel good. Like I'm having a lot of fun and I just want to have more fun. Like can I just pause and just observe that urge? Play around with it. So it doesn't have to be all like super intense, or great training ground is to do it with lower intensity and kind of work your way up. Anything I can clarify or thoughts just to wrap on?
Well, I think if we just kind of keep touching this reminder of all meaningful behavioral change and lasting behavioral change starts with awareness. I think this opportunity for people just to practice in small ways and to like grow their awareness around when they're activated, what options might be available to them. It seems like a really powerful way to begin. And if we start feeling that, like, I just want it to be different, like already, I think remembering that we are just biologically, it takes time to create those new neural pathways. And by practicing, like you're suggesting, in lower stakes environments, is one of the best things you can do, because you need the repetition. And starting when it's low stakes and it's kind of like, if you're an athlete and you're performing or you're training for game day or training for race day or whatever it is, you're going through the motions without the intensity. And so I think this is a really cool way to replicate that just as everyday humans.
I would agree. And this is also the skill in particular. I think the lived practice of it, we often need to stack the skills. So like you're saying, everything starts with awareness. Okay, so it starts with mindfulness. I have to be aware that this thing is happening and I want to shift out of it. How do I tolerate that discomfort of just knowing that this is ineffective or not justified? We need to bring on some distress tolerance skills. And then to go employ the thing that's different, how do I tolerate that? Like, you don't get to scratch that itch that comes with the urge, right? So we're saying, no. We're doing it for a reason. You have a good reason, but that sucks. It's so hard to do that. Yeah. It's so hard. So how do you help, like, really cheerlead yourself, support yourself? Again, I think this is a good one. If you're, like, on a team or in relationship with another person, you're trying to shift out of a behavioral pattern, inviting them into the process. Like, I'm going to work really hard on doing opposite action, or I'm trying to do opposite action. Like, how can you support me, or can you support me? Use all the resources, stack all the skills here.
Totally. Yeah, and even like when you were saying, like, if your tendency is to avoid, like, for example, you're trying to speak up more in meetings, like you have something that's really valuable to share that you think provides really helpful context for the rest of the team. If you tell the whole team or just somebody you trust on that team, like, hey, I'm trying to do this more, would you mind nudging me if you notice that I haven't spoken in a meeting, or help me help myself,
Okay, that, my friends, is checking the facts and opposite action. We'll come back next time. We'll talk about the third skill, problem solving. And then we get into a whole new section of emotion regulation. So more fun content coming your way. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We're so glad you're here. If you like this episode, please rate, share, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Check us out on social at The Skills Podcast or On Point Practice, and check out our website at theonpointpractice.com. Until next time.